Hour number 3, and we have Tim Alexander here, and I did talk to Chris Harris. He does have some information for us at the bottom of the hour. Tim is on every Tuesday for a full hour, and Thursday at least for a half hour, and he's usually here kind of interrogatories with our nuclear expert, and of course he's also does other things. He's actually working hard to get his broadcasting up on YouTube and our live stream.
Please don't talk about that. I've had so much trouble with technical issues, but go ahead.
Well, you know what you should do is you should call me sometime, and I'll just kind of stay in the background because I'm a techophile. I know how to do all kinds of cool stuff. I can do multimedia broadcasting from my live stream channel. I can have multi-point people all over the world connected, and I'm going to start doing that with conferences. And the Procaster now I've used it for 3.5 years. It's actually pretty straightforward, and it'll also convert to YouTube, so you can actually just hit a button and go, and there's your hyperlink, and it gives you the extension, so you can embed it, or you actually get a direct link to YouTube.
That. I actually got the other problems I've had solved, and edited everything. The green screen, everything was great, and then YouTube wouldn't take it. I tried, I think, 3 times. And I don't know
if you do the Procaster first, and put it up on our live stream channel, you just hit a button and it'll convert it for you.
Well, John Kerry has appeared, more or less. He sent a tweet late yesterday, London paper picked up on, showing him sitting in a hospital room in a chair with his one leg propped up. I assume that it's him, although it's very easy to fake digital photos, but I assume it's him. He's been in the hospital now for 12 days for a broken leg. That's pretty unusual, but I think this is one of those things that future historians may, many decades down the road, may find out what actually really happened.
The story I heard is that there was an attempted assassination. Look, I've assisted at surgery where the orthopedic surgeon and I have done, a fractured femur for somebody like a mountain climber, or a compression fracture that's compounded to the side of the leg from a real bad, rollerblade accident or something. Even if he had a compound fracture of his lower leg, unless you got, secondary infection in it or a compartment syndrome, I can't see him being in there with a manometer in the leg for 10, 12 days. No. Most people, even if they're put in a traction splint in a bed, pulling the leg out to length with AO plating and so on, they're going to be out of hospital in 4 to 6 days. They're not going to be in there 12 days. And that's if he had a fractured femur, which there's no evidence that he had a fractured femur. It was a lower leg, so he should have been up walking in a cast and a walker probably in 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe because he's so high, mighty, and important, they might have kept him for 2-3 days. But going on 2 weeks, it's very fishy. I don't know what happened. I'm assuming that's the real picture.
I'm going to make some what I call geopolitical. The old thing is I know how to connect dots, and when I see something like this, it's either one of 3 things. They wanted to shut him up because he was about to say something they didn't want him to say. He was about to make a conclusion to something he had just been to or done that they didn't want publicly aired. Or he had ticked off the wrong person that, and when he's in some kind of interaction that was connected to the global group that said, my gosh, you got to send a message to this guy, just like the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, which is, by the way, at the time that we had the vice president trying to run the presidency, George Bush Sr. So you need to realize George Bush Sr. actually had 2 presidential terms, because for most of Ronald Reagan's second term, it was George Bush Sr., the criminal, who was running the presidency after Ronnie got shot.
If you look at the fellow that shot Reagan, they've released him more or less from the nut hospital now. Right. And he is the absolute splitting image of the last Bush, Jeb Bush.
So
they could be brothers, and of course the families have been very long-time friends. And the vice president was having lunch with his father when Reagan was shot. Vice President Bush.
So what you're saying is that there was definitely a bird in that bush, is what I'm saying.
something's weird. But
my Jim, why I'm saying it, right?
Yeah, I know. Look, when you lift up rocks with these characters in the District of Crooks, District of Columbia, all kind of really gross-looking things crawl out, and these guys are all deeply morally corrupted. They have issues that have issues, and it's just like when they approve a man to become a lifetime U.S. judge, the FBI does a background investigation. The ones that are squeaky clean, they create something. They don't want them. They find the problem that they create. They don't want them in there. They want the ones in there that they've got dirt on, so they can control them.
You know what that's called? That's called a geopolitical legal choke chain. If they don't have a choke chain on them or a kill switch, then they're not going to allow them to get forward. Just like they won't allow any leaders unless they have dissociative identity disorder or multiple personalities, where some demonic minion is actually avataring them with the latest Avatar Xbox, as I said last Christmas. One little minion got a tag on it that says, "Oh my, Satan, I love this. It says on my tag, Barack Hussein Obama." And by the way, at Bohemian Grove, all these men get up there and dress and drag and then dance and sing and so on to all the other people doing all kinds of sexually perverted acts. And, of course, part of the reason is to make sure that everybody's sufficiently perverted and with underage sex and alternative sex. It's everything. It's not because they're necessarily gay. It's because if you pervert somebody enough, you got dirt on them, which is why a lot of these politicians, for example, in Britain, they'll serve you up any kind of sex you want, but they're going to get it on videotape in the hotel and the hookers and make sure the cameras are working.
Well, that's a long tradition. I actually think British politics is even more corrupt than American. Although there are differences, they do occasionally come through looking pretty good. But the people themselves tend to be very corrupt. And the Scots, and I tell you, at all walks of life, the Scots tend to really find the London political scene repugnant. I remember talking to a fellow Earl, I won't mention him, who is from a very, very old Scottish family, and he said, the English are very arrogant, and he was quite disgusted with the whole lot of them, and they almost unanimously elected members of the Scottish National Party to be MPs in London this time. They're fed up with the Labour, with the party, with the Lib Dems, and with the Conservative Party. I wish we could do that here, but we don't have that opportunity. We have a choice between two parties, and usually two idiots who are... Speaking of idiots, by the way, I just linked a story on my blog. U.S. military is arriving in numbers now in the Ukraine for war games, and Canadian troops are arriving in mid-August. I posted a photo of Prime Minister Harper shaking hands with Netanyahu. The caption reads, "My apologies for calling you both idiots. I didn't realize this was classified information." The latest polling in Europe, by the way, is showing that the European masses are strongly against this drive to war with Russia over the Ukraine.
Well, the analogy would be walking up to somebody on the street and he got a microphone. You walk up to him and say, "Mister, what's your first name?" "Oh, my name is Jim." And then you say, "Now, we have a van over there, and we're going to offer a free surgical procedure to you right now. All you have to do is say yes. We're not going to tell you what the procedure is, but you'll be in and out in 10 minutes. And the guy said,
you'll be dead. Decapitation. But
and then you hear, all of a sudden, you hear from the van, you hear somebody with a power saw sawing someone's legs off and said, "What's that screaming for?" "Oh, their legs are too long, so we took care of it."
We're shortening them rather than shortening their pants,
yeah. So that is welcome back, and so Tim, let's look at the news today on your blog, europebusiness.blogspot.com. I just this morning, just out of curiosity, and because we're working on multiple things to get people ready, We're going to have on the program coming up tomorrow in our Dave and Jean Mitchell. They'll be coming up on our show in hour 4. And people need to understand that we're preparing communities around the country and outside the country for people to go to. We're also, I filled out the form this morning for Vivos, VIVOS.com, which is the underground super shelters. I want to get ready for pretty well anything, because I'll tell you the menu, and I'm not going to say I know when it's going to happen, but these are the things I'm pretty certain are going to happen within months, not necessarily years. I expect a major correction of the economy by this fall. After 29 which is 23rd. And I'm not going to say it's all going to happen then, but Greece is going to fail to pay their $12 billion debt in July, and it's going to fly apart, and the derivatives market's going to go nuts. I expect the war in the Middle East is going to get much, much worse, and the Iranians are going to stop the Strait of Hormuz, stop any oil traffic going through there. And all I have to do is call Lloyd's of London, and those tankers won't be insured anymore. And then I also expect the Russians to get sufficiently ticked off at our placement of first-strike anti-nuclear missile systems in Eastern Europe to finally decide that they're going to even do more bare-bottom runs a couple hundred miles off the coast and do more kind of warning things to say, we can cyber attack you and turn off your grid, we can hit you with an EMP, we can do all kinds of stuff. Don't try to do more things, America.
Well, like the USS Cook, a Aegis-class destroyer, they literally blinded it. They sent 2 aircraft, both unarmed, Su-27 and Su-23. The Su-23 is an attack plane. It had an electronic package on it. This was in the Black Sea. This was about 3 months ago. And so this is a multi-billion-dollar destroyer with just an incredible air defense system on it. And they jammed everything. It was totally blind. And as they ran several simulated attack runs on it, scared the hell out of the crew, and then left the area. The captain immediately turned around and headed towards a NATO port, the nearest NATO port, and 19 of the officers and crew have resigned from the Navy after that experience.
Now here's an analysis of this. The Russians showed that they were gentlemen. They showed us, don't mess with Russia, we want to be friends. You know we have superior weapon systems, can blind you, have radar jamming, and will destroy all your weapon systems. So let's be friends, get rid of drug trade in Afghanistan so our young people grow up and have little babies. We have a special day Putin inaugurated 5 years ago that says, this is Natural Conception Day. Go and do it. Don't work. Go home. Go home that day. And you know what? Instead of our attitude of Obama, which I call Mickey Mouse on crack cocaine, that's what he looks like now, and he's getting skinnier, and his ears are popping out more. Mickey Mouse on crack. Is these fools take Russia and say, Mr. Harper from Canada in the G7 this past couple of days said, we've got to make certain we kick Russia out. You got to kick Russia out. 7 time zones, one of the largest economies on earth.
Harper is a bought and paid for mouthpiece of the Zionists and globalists.
He is so nuts inside Canada.
Killed. I mean, he's an idiot.
Yeah, I posted up an article over in Clay and Iron about Harper. He is such a nut inside Canada. And my brother-in-law, Wayne Fander, was the assistant to the Premier of Nova Scotia, who was a conservative, and he knew Harper personally. And he said, this guy, Harper, is out of his freaking mind. Now, it's people like Harper and Angela Merkel, who's schizophrenic politically. She's on one side of an issue and she's on the other side. And Obama, who's clearly Mickey Mouse on crack. Okay? And we're now in a situation where these fools are pushing buttons to guarantee that Russia and China have to actually get ready to fight a World War III. Economically, they're being pushed to the point where we're trying to deep six their economy. We destroyed last year the ruble, so it's got less than half its value. We tried to destroy their economy based on oil and gas because we purposely lowered the price. So it not only killed our oil and gas industry and hydrofracking, it killed theirs too. And this is a direct attack on Russia. And Russians enough gentlemanly that they say, we show you our weapon systems, don't mess with us, we want to be friends. I mean, I don't understand why we tolerate these politicians.
Americans and Canadians are not driving their government. We have a tiny minority of extreme pro-Israeli
but it's not even pro-Israeli.
But also it's the globalist. And,
Tim,
and
it's
they
not
have
just
a demonic-driven
It's not pro-Israel. Israel's being served up as a sacrifice. If they start,
I know that, and so do a lot of people in Israel. But
I talked to an anesthesiologist last week, and he told me. I talked to an anesthesiologist in Israel last week, and he called up and he said, "I want to talk to Dr. Deagle," all the way from Israel. And he says, "You're exactly right. I got to get out of here. My parents live in America." He said, if this shooting war starts, he knows, he's got friends that are in generals and so on, that Iron Dome and the Green Pine radar system is not going to protect him from several 100,000 rockets coming in.
No.
He knows that the policies of Netanyahu and Lieberman are going to make sure that everyone in Israel, unless you're in a special military bunker, is going to die real fast.
And what's going to happen to them when they come out? And their country's
they're going to come up
gone.
to a devastated land, and all the historical buildings and documents and everything will be completely fried from their National Library and the special centers there and all the historical buildings. They'll all be turned into rubble.
And Israel will destroy the Middle East with her nukes and ignite the Third World War. But who benefits from that?
Satan. Satan's
exactly.
there. Screw tape letters. You minions are doing good. You have a Avatar Xbox with a tag for Stephen Harper, Canada, and Angela Merkel, who's now showing good signs of geopolitical suicidal schizophrenia. And we have Mickey Mouse on crack, and the demonic minions are running.
I like that.
Mickey Mouse on crack.
Sure. I mean, we put the worst idiots and fools in government office. And I mean, hell, where are the John F. Kennedys? Where are the Eisenhowers?
They got a bullet in their head is what they have. John F. Kennedy dared to tick off Satan. Remember Jesus Christ was taken high above the temple, and Satan says, "See all the kingdoms of this earth. They're mine, if you simply worship me, incarnation of the Most High God, and I shall give you these kingdoms from me, because I am the Lord of them." And Jesus didn't argue with him.
An idiot like Satan would attempt to tempt God himself.
But that's you see, he's the most intelligent, created idiot that is overachieving idiot that ever existed.
But when you're evil, when you're warped, your intelligence is warped.
Exactly.
And that's the problem, and that's the problem with the people controlling the American government and many of the leading governments around the world, including Israel.
And by the way, not all rich people are evil. There's a lot of rich people that are just freaked out, that say the evil ones are pulling the levers of power and going to ruin it for everybody.
Absolutely.
No Airstream jets, no yachts, no private islands, only an underground hotel. Hi. Welcome back, and we have Chris Harris here. Chris, we've got lots of news to cover. Fukushima Daiichi, there are new brewing disasters. In fact, it's closer to a much, much bigger catastrophe with the Fukushima site. Tell us what's going on there, because a lot of people think, well, the worst is over, right? Wrong. Since January, the radiation levels have shot up in spikes over 7,000 times higher than it was any time in the last 4 years. And since then, the site is actually at the point of what's called catastrophic destruction. In other words, the level of destruction, we haven't seen destruction that could happen there. And it's not just at Fukushima Daiichi. There's other reactors that are sitting within the fault line zone or tsunami zone in Japan, including Oi, etc., that were previously damaged by the superquake or tsunami, that also prophesy what's happening around the world, because all over the planet there's been an increase of 500% since March 11th, 2011, of level 5 earthquakes or bigger. And that means things like the Cumbre Viejo super volcanic island can slide off and create an 800-foot tsunami traveling at Mach 1 toward the North American, European, Great Britain coast. And all the reactors are sitting on the coastal area because they need water. And on top of that, the massive radiation release from Fukushima, if it really does happen, is already an extinction level event. And I've said this before in the program, that one of the Star Trek episodes I found most shocking over 20 years ago, back in the late 90s, was one where the aliens, literally this council of these alien civilizations, were looking and they said, well, we won't remove the human race yet, but if the whales stop singing in the ocean, we're coming back. And Star Trek had detected a signal that somehow these synchronous civilizations had actually made the decision because the whale stopped singing because the human race had polluted the Pacific Ocean badly enough that they stopped singing. Well, guess what happened this year? There's no orca whale babies now for 4.5 years. None. Zero. Nada. None over a year old. They all die. The sea lions are dying. The smelts run is gone. The salmon run is gone. The filter feeder fish. Even the California government has said, by the way, we're not going to tell you what's in it, and we're not going to test it, but don't eat filter feeders. Don't eat scallops. Don't eat oysters. Yeah, we're not going to tell you why. It's probably just domoic acid. Well, actually, what? You're a dimwit if you believe it's just domoic acid, which locks on non-competitively to the cholinergic receptor and makes you literally have permanent damage to your hippocampus, so you become basically an imbecile. No, it's not domoic acid. You're a dimwit if you believe that garbage. It is called...
Hold it. Doesn't that make you eligible to be president?
Yeah, right. No, I think you have to have enough wits to be satanically energized. I think that ruins the game. I mean, you can just see the little minion throwing his little avatar Xbox down. Damn it! They gave that president domoic acid. Now I can't control his movements. Darn it! You know, what I see happening is the planet is already suffering an ELE. So tell us, Chris, how bad this is on Fukushima Daiichi, and how does it prophesy the 586 reactors and more being built all the time in China and India? We just got a giant contract to build more reactors in India, and Russia, Rosatom, has got many, many contracts. They have 5 reactors they're building in Johannesburg, South Africa, the Russians. They have a whole bunch of reactors they're building at Boshir. The Chinese have 2. I mean, this is just way, way out of control. And these are all in war zones, tsunami zones, earthquake zones, or where power blackouts can cause hot shutdown, and boom. And Fukushima Daiichi is already killing the North Pacific Ocean. It's killing it. It's literally turning it into what I call an ocean. This is the first what's called radiologically induced ocean desert.
Well, Dr. Ruth, my team anyway, we've been thinking about different scenarios that could happen. I know we've been doing this since you and I had actually met, and we hadn't stopped doing it. And I was going to say, an interesting article in E&E today. I know that's a repost from 2013. They do that sometimes.
Right.
It's kind of slow, but it is from Banyan Analytics, which is this is a think tank that assists the U.S. government in developing strong emergency preparedness and response systems in Asia and Pacific. And they're saying that there has not yet been a major disruption in Fukushima that could cause another meltdown, potentially affect the lives of millions in Asia and Pacific. On the west coast of the United States is an incredible relief, but scientists have asserted that the situation in Fukushima is so fragile that a number of things could go wrong at any moment and make the current risky situation turn globally catastrophic. Now, we believe it's already globally catastrophic, as you just pointed out.
Within 6 weeks, 22 provinces in China. Now, this is now west of Fukushima, detected 6 times or more levels of radiation of all kinds from tritium and other isotopes like thorium. And people need to understand this. If China is detecting cyclonic winds carrying it back in the opposite direction, imagine what's down in the pipeline we call the tailpipe of Japan, which is America. And the Kuroshio current carries it directly toward Washington State and British Columbia in the intertidal region. We've had Dana Durnford on the program. I'm going to get him back on the program to give specific questions. Remember, I was a charter member of Greenpeace over 40 years ago, and I did marine oceanography before I went into medicine. So I'm going to tell you, I have a very high level of expertise in this area, and I'm completely and utterly freaked out by it. Now, to say, to hold the sign up, don't panic now. Don't panic now. I'm holding the sign up now saying, time to panic. Time to panic, people. If you don't understand this is an ELE or extinction level event, you're an idiot. And if you want to challenge me and you think you're a scientist, have the nerve and stupidity to do so. Call in and I'm going to chew you up and dissect you intellectually and give you mixed mental martial arts right here on air. Because I'm going to fire so many questions at you, idiot, or idiots, that you think you know better about how bad this is, and it hasn't even finished yet. I mean, this is going to continue to go kaboom, 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 and eventually we're going to have other sites in Japan, which now they're reactivating, and other reactors around the world as volcanism and earthquakes increase, that we're going to have a major catastrophe, and even just power outages, if we start a shooting war with Russia, just a coronal mass ejection or a cyber attack by the Tianjin army in China, or the Russian cybernetic forces, or the Iranians. Just a cybernetic attack could knock our power out, and guess what? We have to wait 3 to 5 years to get even parts from China because we don't make the parts to fix our power grid anymore. And within 48 hours, most of the reactors in the United States, when they go into hot shutdown, they lose containment and they blow up. And we're not talking about little blow-ups. We're talking about many, many Fukushimas. Bad news.
Yeah, well, what this organization is saying is, well, I guess it's good for us to see this because it's basically what we've been talking about since you allowed me to come in and discuss any of this matters on your program 4 years ago. And we spend a lot of time saying what could go wrong, and actually in some detail. So with their general statement saying that something can go wrong.
Let me be very specific here. So I'd like to open it up, so I'm going to give specific technical issues. Number one, we're getting a massive increase in long-acting isotopes, which are bioaccumulating. That means isotopes that last 30 to 40 years to 26,000 years. Thorium, strontium, and plutonium. 26,500-year half-life. We are getting a massive increase in tritium, which, by the way, doesn't degrade at all, ever. There's no half-life of tritium. Once you make it, it's there forever. And tritium causes DNA intercalation. It slides the codons of DNA of every living thing over, so it causes base pair sliding, and you don't get proper translocation or transcription of DNA to make proteins and enzymes. Permanent. We are going to have hydrogen explosions on the site. We're going to have nuclear explosions on the site. And we have such powerful neutron beams coming out of the ground, you can actually see them at nightfall, a blue light coming out of the ground going up 20, 30 miles into the air because these neutron beams are actually striking nitrogen and creating light shows in the air. If you fly within hundreds of miles of Fukushima, you can see these blue light beams shooting up from the ground because there's that much we call, neutron accelerated reactions occurring. And they are going to be hypercritical reactions occur. They're going to be big and small nuclear explosions forever. And the whole site is untreatable. They can't get at it. We want to talk about the clean room for just a minute. And then you said something very important about an Indonesian super volcano that's blowing up. And it's probably the hot spot that was under Toba 75,000 years ago that killed the native peoples of North America. They were completely wiped out by the downwind nuclear winter that occurred that literally killed them all, and they had to recolonize North America from Asia over the land bridge, from the Siberian land bridge that crossed over from Asia to North America through Alaska. So
yeah, it was so bad it literally put mankind on the brink of extinction.
Apparently they analyzed the genetics of the mitochondria. They found the whole human race was down to less than 10,000 people in the world. Or 75,000 years ago. Went from millions to less than 10,000. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention here is this clean room article that Chris had to run. But they finally, after 4.5 years, got a clean room, which means they can actually have a lunchroom that's clean, it's less dose. It's not perfect, but it's less dose radiation. And I call it a syndrome of what's called Yakuzanemia. Now, I like these terms to try to really explain really what's going on, because the Yakuza, what they do is they take people that are in debt to the Yakuza, or the mafia, the Japanese mafia grabs these people off the street and they basically send them in there to die. And the problem is, if you have untrained people, or people you only train up and it takes a few weeks, whatever, to even get basic training, and all the people that were, properly trained in this site know where everything is, including the original equipment that's all completely destroyed. The Yakuza are running out of people. So if you send somebody in and they tell them, you cover radiation shield with lead foil so that your dosimetry card, even if eyes turn green, hair fall out, bleeding around gums, you don't tell boss, or we come and we kill your whole family. That's what they do. I'm not kidding you, okay? No. So what's happening in the Yakuzanemia basically means they had to make a clean room so they wouldn't have their people die at 4 days. They'll die at 12.
It's absolutely incredible. It's taken them 4 years to put a clean room near a site, or actually 3 sites, that have gone China syndrome. and they just now have put a clean room in. You cannot.
We talked about this before.
You cannot overemphasize the raw criminal stupidity and incompetence that has been taking place in Japan with this mess.
Well, here's what you do. First off, coming from one site to another, you take a bunch of containers, you line it with depleted uranium, which stops the neutron flux, and you'll also put a Faraday cage over and ground these containers so that when you have a electromagnetic vortex, which it looks like a dust devil if you could see it, these vortex fields would actually be grounded so they wouldn't, whip through your body and cause what we call beta particles.
Easy. It's just a copper cage that's grounded.
Right, but you also line them with depleted uranium, stops the neutron flux, and you use air filtration. What you do is you turn the air into a plasma, you charge the radiotoxins, and then you pull them out with a filter. Okay? That's easy. They could have done this 4.5 years ago, but of course I'm giving them technical specifics of what they can do, just like they don't have muon detectors to say where the corium is. Infuse hyperosmolar boronated water and then use the scalar frequencies to cause what's called hypercrystallization to do what's called neutron capture. And then also dehydrate by getting a diversion project above Fukushima so the aquifer doesn't keep on feeding water directly underneath the radioactive sites in the buildings out to the ocean. And in fact, when they do store the radioactive water, they're just dumping it in the ocean and say, well, we did take out some of the strontium and whatever, thorium. They're dumping everything else. This is just, I call it scamtastic. It's
Why do you think everything's dying in the Pacific Ocean, the largest ocean on Earth?
Right, and as I mentioned in the earlier segments, when the orca whale stops singing because there's no baby whales, I'm not saying this is Star Trek, but you don't have to wait for aliens to come in here and decide it's time to get rid of the human race. God's going to do it. And the human race...
I'm an analyst, and one of the things I like to do is you've got to stand back from the trees, look at the forest, and then even get off the planet and look down at things from multiple perspectives to understand what's really happening. And if you do that, here you have mankind that, 200 years ago was, early 1800s. How primitive were people then? We didn't even have trains. We didn't have telegraphs. We didn't have anything. 100 years ago, we barely had invented flying machines. Most people didn't have running water, much less inside toilets, etc., etc. And now we have, Einstein said, it's a hell of a way to boil water. We have all these reactors with the most dangerous substances on Earth, enriched uranium and plutonium, designed to boil water to turn the steam turbine to generate electricity. Now that's nuts. We can burn coal and scrub the coal, after the emissions, but no, we're going to use this stuff, and we keep building them. And at every site, they have all these storage rods constantly being fresh water being pumped over them to keep them cool. Why? Because they don't know what to do with them. It's too dangerous to move them very far. If they fall apart, you can have an explosion. So what do they do with them? Well, when they started all this nonsense, when I was a baby, we'll have a solution. We'll have a technical solution in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. I'm now 64. There's no technical solution to this insanity, but it's very profitable. And what we have in this country and in this world are people, particularly at the top of the political structure, that are so damn corrupt, they literally are poisoning the human race and are putting us in danger of life extinction.
Well, I don't know if you're aware of this group called the Keshe Foundation. He's an Iranian born in 1958 that works in plasma physics. And I looked at some of the experiments they're doing, and they're going to call it infantile plasma physics, to be honest with you. But he's proposed all these documents for world peace and sent them to the Vatican, different world leaders, and has them all published. I declare I want world peace. It says in the Bible, not by power but by might, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. Unless people's heart is changed to come in line with God, there's not going to be peace on earth. And when we have real solutions like the combination of which wing generator system from Professor McCanney, and light sail system for compressed air storage. That is a solution. 300 of them will replace all our power needs in North America, 3,000 for the entire world. The problem is they don't want solutions. We have to understand there's a real evil stalking. For example, the pollution in the Pacific Ocean, they'll say, well, we can't filter out the Pacific Ocean. Listen, these are scientific facts. Every time a coronal mass ejection is about to happen, there's a gravity wave comes off the sun, and the T1 half, or half-life of all radioisotopes on the Earth, inside chambers deep down miles underneath, actually changes. Because a gravity wave whips right through the Earth like it's nothing. Okay? It is faster than the speed of light, and it changes the time-space constant of the half-life. If you hit it with the right frequency of gravity wave, it'll shatter micronuclei and actually, like a diamond cutter, split along the facets of the isotope and actually make it non-radioactive. We could do that. If we had tunable gravity waves, we could cleanse the ocean of specific isotopes with the right tuned frequencies, and all the isotopes and all the living things would be gone.
Do you think we have that technology, or could have that?
I know how to do it. I know how to do it.
Okay.
People say, well, you don't have solutions. I said, yes, I do, actually. See, I trained myself in quantum mechanics before I went into oceanography, and I had a special scholarship to go in nuclear plasma physics at MIT. And I can tell you right now, when people say, Dr. Deagle, you can't propose a solution to the problem, I said, yeah, no, Warehouse 13 has all kinds of technology and science, and they've bifurcated civilization. And as Professor McCanney says, Tier 2 science is what's taught at university. Tier 1 science is by invitation only. You don't get to know Tier 1 science unless they invite you because they want to, number one, know you have capacity.
What I have experienced of it is having been involved in aerospace and a few things.
Yeah, you saw Dr. Nakamatsu. Yeah, you met Dr. Nakamatsu and saw that he actually was compromised, and they threatened him that if he didn't turn over the technology and suppress it, they were going to kill him and his family.
Him. I think he knew. We talked for hours, and
right.
He had a car engine that ran off water. Okay, very simple. And they offered to buy it from him for a fortune. And right. I said, you better sell it because otherwise they'll deal with your next of kin. And he understood that.
Right. In other words, take the check and keep her.
It's more subtle, but you get the idea.
Well, the principle is this, Tim: is take the check and maintain your pulse.
Exactly.
You know,
take the check and see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Otherwise, we won't see you tomorrow because we're going to slap the back of the shovel on the grass over your dead body inside a coffin.
Yep.
And Nakamatsu got it. He was smart enough to say, "Yes, sir, I take check. There you go. No problem."
Yeah. He's a good man, but yeah.
He's a good man, but unfortunately frightened.